All right, there it is. Yeah. We're live.
Yeah.
How's it going?
It was a rough game last night. It always is on those on those late night games. I always take the day off work the next day when I can, off the real job, because it's like, I'm up all night. I can't go to bed. I try and get some pre-writing done because I have some articles I have to have, like, post-game stuff. This, of course, we got to get this going the next day. So I always try and take the next day off of the real job because part-time job's a little more important when it comes to those late games.
I want to get one of my conspiracy theories off the top because I don't want it to be in the podcast.
In the pod, okay.
Like, let's just deal with it here.
Video exclusive for our guys at Second City Gridiron. You guys can hear this. The podcast guys, you have to, tune into the video.
We know the Bears are not. They're rebuilding. They're in. That is what it is. We know that.
Yeah.
Said it again. I'll say it again. Least amount of cash spent on the field. Third amount of number 3 in the league in dead money. They're telling you that they're not trying to win a lot of games this year. Green Bay's, they are what they are, but they're a good football team. They've got an alien quarterback. They could, potentially make a run in the NFC. I think that the NFL honestly looked at the record books and they said, Green Bay at home, week 2, they take over the all-time lead in wins. We're going to give the Bears a super tough matchup in week 1 so that they'll lose.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to set this up so that we have a storyline where the Packers take over the all-time wins lead in week 2. And it's just this, like, it's just, we're just the Washington Generals, right? The
sacrificial lamb.
That's all it is, right? And the number of times that a sentence started with Aaron Rodgers this and Aaron Rodgers that on the broadcast last night, like, oh, but you don't see Aaron Rodgers miss a open player quite like that. Like, why do we have to call a game like that? I mean, it's been my entire life. Every time the Packers play, it's Brett Favre, who what a piece of absolute, and continuing to reveal himself on that. And then it turns over into Aaron Rodgers. And it's just this, like, it's disgusting. I just hate it. I need an alternate audio track for these games. I'm just done with it. I'm just done with it.
That's the Chris Collinsworth. I mean, it's funny because, like, when I watch him do other games, I actually enjoy his commentary. He's a smart football guy. He knows his stuff. He brings up a lot of interesting points. But like you said, man, when it's those Packer games and it's that Aaron Rodgers love, and you know why. He's such a good football player. Sure. The Packers are such, they're media darlings because, they're small town. It's like, you get it, but it's like, shut up, man. I'm sick of it. I'm with you though, man. It's right there. It's like, enough's enough,
I'm just so I guess the silver lining here on that one is that it's over. Like, I know they got to play him again, but it's not going to be on Sunday Night Football. Like, at least that part, the primetime part, is over. That the sacrifice on the altar is over. Maybe we'll get into the penalty stuff a little bit during the show. It's really sticking in my craw today. And I didn't think the Bears were going to win that game, but I wanted to see what it looked like in a fair setting, right? Like, just let them play. Don't put your thumb on the scale. You don't need to, right? Like, just let them play. It was from the first freaking play. The first play, the Bears got a BS penalty. And it's like, what? Yeah. We're going to give them a starter first down just because, we want to start them off on the right foot. And it didn't get any better. There were plenty. I don't think that there were any bad calls that went Chicago's way, but there were at least 4 or 5 that went the Packers' way. And that's not even they didn't call holding, right? Like, I'm not really a holding Twitter guy, right? Where, oh, that was hold. Look at this screenshot. It's like, yeah. Okay.
I think as former offensive linemen, we kind of appreciate the fact those guys get away with it every now and again. Right. But that one, man, oh my God. It's like.
But there was the one where it didn't even make sense. It was like, Why would you pick up that flag? He
Oh,
made the sack. You know that they're going to decline it. So why would
yeah.
you say no flag on the play? Like just say, yeah, holding, declined,
Yeah.
because you're obviously going to take the sack. I mean, that referee at some point has to be thinking like, well, why don't I just call it? They're just going to decline it. It was a really weird moment, because it, as someone who's dealt with so many penalties by this team over the years, it's like, see, like that was like the Leo DiCaprio moment from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where see, I knew it. That they weren't even going to call that hold. Um, Imagine if Rodgers got the ball away. Well, imagine if he threw it at a receiver's feet as he felt that pressure, and they pick up that flag. I mean, whoa. Like probably would have lost my
Well,
mind.
it makes you wonder what would they have then at that point, because they changed their mind. It's like, it's like we talked about a couple weeks ago. There's so many Bearsy type things that happen, and it seemed to be, it's accelerated more when they're playing the Packers. And look, I know all fan bases feel the same way. I don't know, man. It's like, it's just, there's something about this rivalry. It gets the juices flowing. It makes things more noticeable, I guess, than normal. But there was some really really rough situations at that game. So what are you gonna do?
What do you do?
What do you
Okay.
do?
All right. You want to record a podcast?
Yeah, let's get this going here.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
Oh man, years of writing and talking, segues. Put me on your local news here soon.
There he is.
All right, let's get into it. Welcome to Bear and Balance. I'm Jeff Berckes, a writer for Windy City Gridiron, and I'm joined by the editor of that fine website, Lester A. Wiltfong Jr. Lester, new year, same movie. We have seen this many, many times. The Packers destroy the Bears 27-10 in a game that looked like it was going to be closer at one point, but it ended up not being. How are you doing tonight?
I'm fine. I mean, it's always rough. I mean, it's those primetime games, man. They always want to have them in Green Bay. I understand why it's Chicago versus Green Bay in primetime. It's a ratings winner. Doesn't matter if the Bears are awful, which, we've seen plenty of awful seasons this last couple decades. Doesn't matter. The Bears are going to get the Packers in prime time, or one of those, premier, late afternoon spots, because it's Chicago market. I mean, our fan base is passionate. We'll tune in no matter what. We're going to tune in for sure if it's the Packers, because we want to see what seems to be the impossible happen. We want to see our team, knock off Aaron Rodgers and the Packers.
So there was a lot of negative things that came out of that game, and when you lose by 3 scores, there are plenty of negatives. I do think that there were some positives, and I think that we're going to be able to highlight some of those things tonight. So again, this is the first year of a rebuild. You're going to have to take the lumps as they come. I think that there were a couple of additional lumps that were added for unfortunate reasons last night, but we're going to sift through this. And again, we're going to get through this together, right? Like we're going to be able to get through this. So just hang with us through this.
We're here
season.
for you guys.
We are here for you. The first thing that we do in all of our shows is we start in the trenches, which is incredibly important. And I think there were some good things about the trenches this week as well. This year, that is sponsored by our friends at Portillo's. We are giving away a $100 gift card every single week. And so if you are interested in Portillo's, which who isn't, let us know who your player of the week is each and every week for a chance to get $100. And I will send you the gift card. It's going well. People are liking the free Portillos. So hit us up wherever you get this. Either email us. If you're listening to the podcast, hit us up in the comments in Twitter, hit us up in the comments on the website, wherever you are, hit us up in those comments. So
right there it's a winner from 2 weeks ago. He got his gift card, and he messaged me over the weekend. He was going to get some lunch. He said he loved it. So Michael, appreciate you listening, and we're glad you guys are all winning. And right now we're caught up. All the gift cards are out, so we're actually caught up. So it's awesome.
Yep, absolutely. So good stuff. And we are going to start in the trenches. Do I start this week?
I think you might be this week.
Okay, so I'm going to start off this week. 2 places that I could go here, but I'm going to highlight Tevin Jenkins, because I think Tevin Jenkins played quite well.
Yes.
Our friend Robert Schmitz said something to the effect of, somebody go back and calculate what the running yards per carry were when Tevin Jenkins was in versus when Lucas Patrick was in. I'm interested in that number. I did not have time to go do that. But when it was noticeable when he was in there, he was having an impact on the running game. I think that he is settling in nicely. Again, for only his second start at guard as a professional, pretty impressive, and also against some pretty good defensive players. I would love to go back and watch the L-22 when that comes out. That's not out yet for most of us. So I will take a look when I'm doing that, because for Bears Over Beers this week, I just told EJ that I'm going to look at the running game, and I'm gonna treat myself. But Tevin Jenkins was part of that and part of that success, and I think that's just only a good thing for the Chicago Bears that Tevin Jenkins is looking good at one of those 5 offensive line spots. If he can solidify one of those spots, fantastic. That is exactly what we want out of this year. He's in the early position to be able to prove himself. I think this week went a long way towards doing that.
I was really against the whole rotation thing with Patrick and Jenkins. And then last week, I'm like, man, I guess it kind of worked. You have Jenkins in there playing well. Patrick's in there, playing well, getting his win back because he will be your center at some point. And then this week, seemed like Jenkins seemed like he was the much better player at that right guard spot. There was actually a clip where it was one of those like he had in college where he took the guy right to the sideline. It was like, he has that type of aggression. He has that type of nasty streak. And like I thought Jenkins had a heck of a game this week.
Well, we talked about it before. Like, once he figures out that what he can do is he can grab onto that chest plate and then he can just body some guys. That's what he did a couple times. And that, again, I always thought playing guard was a lot of fun, like because it is a real strength and leverage position. And so I think that once he figures out that you can have a lot of fun in that interior offensive line, he's going to really enjoy it. So what about you? Who you want to highlight today?
Speaking of grip strength, this guy has had some nice grip strength going in the game as well. And that's left tackle Braxton Jones. Just, his pass pro still is a work in progress, which is going to happen. He's a rookie left tackle. But the Bears committed to the run, and I thought Braxton Jones had a really nice game this week. His punch was a little more under control this week. Last week it was a little sloppy. He got a little bit out. His shoulders out in front of his feet a little bit. We didn't see that happen this week. I did not have him giving up any sacks this week. He did give up a little pressure, but right now as a rookie, he's still better as a run blocker. But I did grade his play, and I only had him down for -4 for the game. He's coming along. I know a lot of Bears fans after some preseason, getting beat by the bull rush. And then, of course, last week he gave up the 2 sacks. Some fans were down on him, but like we talked about with a lot of these young guys, it's a work in progress. Let them come into their own. Let them, understand what's going on with the game around them. Braxton Jones had a pretty nice game this week.
That's awesome. So we highlighted 2 offensive linemen, which is interesting. And again, there was some offensive success. Don't be fooled by the 10 points. There was
game,
good
man.
things. Run game was there. So we'll talk about that more in a little bit. That's a really good start to Trent's tribute. I don't know where the rest of the show is going to go, but I have to at least say Travis Gibson deserves a little love in Trent's tribute as well. Yeah. He played well, a couple sacks. One of them was more of a coverage sack, but you still got to give him credit for continuing to work. Anytime you can take down Aaron Rodgers 2 times, you need to be mentioned. So if he gets mentioned later, great, but I want to make sure that we at least mention him up top because he deserves some praise up at the top of the show as well. So that's the Portillo's Trent's tribute. Let us know who your player of the week is, and we will get you in that drawing. We'll draw by the middle of the week.
Put it in the comment section, wherever you're watching this, put it in the comment section. For you guys that are podcast only, send us an email at secondcitygridiron@gmail.com, and that's second with a 2ND. And then we had a bunch of people that said that had the email this week to us. So you guys didn't win this week. Maybe next week you guys will be the winner.
Perfect. All right. Let's get on to tweet of the week. I'll start off here, and this is PFF Steve, and I am not going to try to pronounce his last name. So PFF Steve said that touchdown percent on quarterback run plays from the 1 yard line since 2017 out of the shotgun formation, 74.5% of the time that play is successful. under center, or I suppose it says no shotgun, so I guess maybe it could be pistol or something, but let's just say under center. It's a lower conversion rate at 60.3%. So that like Tom Brady sneak where he's right under center, takes it, and then just like burrows his way into the end zone, is the one that I think everybody was clamoring for, saying like, hey,
Yeah.
if you're gonna do this with Justin Fields, just do the Tom Brady thing. This stat, which is probably influenced by Cam Newton quite a bit,
Yeah.
who would do this from shotgun, but this stat, I don't know the raw numbers behind it. It just shows that there are plays that have a lot of success if you're going to do that. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this play because one, I feel pretty confident that that was a touchdown. Everybody in the booth was saying like, "Yeah, we think it's a touchdown." There's just not enough evidence to overturn it. Even the guy that's like the former official was like, I think it's a touchdown, but you just can't overturn it because blah blah blah." So one, I do think it was a successful conversion. Two, he, you know, Fields is not the biggest, like stoutest guy. So if you want to take him from a little bit deeper where he can use his athleticism, I think that makes some sense. So I want to hear your thoughts on like the choice of play call and what maybe you would have preferred to have seen in that situation.
I understand the concept behind running quarterback power. I mean, it's basically you have an extra guy because the quarterback is you're not always a ball carrier. I get it. I mean, the play was there. It was a nice play. Like you said, it looked like he got in. The refs didn't see it that way. At the time, in the moment, I was like, you know what? David Montgomery has been balling up to this point. The O-line is doing a good job with that type of run, some I formation stuff, some zone blocking stuff. If you weren't going to do a quarterback sneak, if then, let's give it to Montgomery. Let him, power in there. I mean, that's his job. I mean, he's been a powerful runner this whole game. He was all lathered up. That's what you want to see out of your run game. I understand that, like I said, the concept of the quarterback power would have been nice to see it actually work there, but at the time I was more for, let's not do the shotgun play, but as we have a chance to sleep on it and look at some of the numbers, it was a good play. It just didn't work out this time.
I like to give the quarterback an option, right? And I understand what you're like. You say you get that extra blocker in there, but I like to give the quarterback an option. So when you have a guy that's as athletic as Fields, I would prefer if you're going to do this, and maybe you'll get there when he gets a little bit more mature in his game, but to put him on the move and give him an option to throw the ball or to be able to take it in. Not quite the Kyler Murray play that happened where he was just doing the like basically how I played Madden,
Yeah.
where he's just like running around with a fast quarterback for 10 seconds and then finally take off and he I think it was a 2-point conversion that Murray did there. But I want to see them use his athleticism a little more and put pressure on, basically put him in a position where he makes the defense wrong. Right. That's what option plays are all about. So you put a player into conflict and either make him come up and pop it over the top of him, or make him kind of drift back and test you to take off and run, and then use that speed to dive towards the goal line. So I just think you're taking options away when you decide, hey, I'm just going to take the quarterback and I'm going to run him, in this hole. You better win, right? Like you better win all of those matchups. And they just, the Bears just weren't good enough to do that last night on that play. Again, it was successful in my mind. So it's one of those where it's tough to draw it out too much. And then that really would have changed the game. But I did think that this stat was kind of interesting. I do think that there's probably a specific player, Cam Newton, that I think is impacting the stats from shotgun, but I do think it's one of those where you say, well, okay, maybe it wasn't that egregious of a call to make it from the shotgun rather than under center. Just kind of an interesting thing to think about. I know the gut reaction from a lot of people was, hey, that was stupid. But there may have been some good behind it.
I mean, like I said, my whole reason at the time being upset with it because they were cooking with Montgomery.
Right.
Let him finish his job. He basically got you guys down there. He's ready for it. Let him do the job there. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could have done it. I think the power was, it seemed to have worked. I think you could have done a power to Montgomery. But with blasting game in there and the eye and the stuff they're doing with him across formation, it was working. So that was my only thing with it. But like I said, hindsight, we had a chance to sleep on it. It was a pretty good play. Plus, like you said, man, they scored. It was right there. So what's the difference? So
yeah, it's hard. It's like, well, I mean, if they would have like really scored,
yeah.
they really would have
Yeah.
put. I'm done with that. But what about you? What's your tweet of the week?
For me, it's from our guy Aaron Lemming at Aaron Lemming NFL. Tonight has been sobering reality. The Bears are in year one of a rebuild. These games are going to happen. The good news, they've got a pair of winnable games coming up. Maybe we'll finally get to see the offense open up, which is the offense did not open up. I mean, the run game was clicking, but Justin Fields with 11 pass attempts in the game. I went back and checked. The last time the Bears had so few passing attempts was Mitch Trubisky's rookie year. I think he was like 4 of 7 against the Panthers in like an October game, and they won that game. They did win that game. It was just I don't know. I just I figured that last week's he had like 18 pass attempts in the ridiculous rainstorm was going to be the low water mark of pass attempts. I did not expect it to be in a pretty nice night in Green Bay that he'd only have 11 attempts. Just let's open it up. Let's see what happens with the Texans coming up this week, then the Giants. So like Aaron said, 2 winnable games. I mean, if the Bears are 3-1 after 4 weeks, it's a hell of a start. I think as fans we'll be cool with that because I think most fans had them 0-2 at this point.
Yeah, even if they, the Giants are 2-0, the Texans have played tough, right? Texans look like they were going to steal a win in Denver, which does not happen in September, right? So I mean, these guys are not necessarily. You can't use last year's records to predict anything. The Lovie Smith probably has that defense playing pretty stiff defense, right? They haven't given up a lot of points. So it will be an interesting test. I mean, I think we just sort of roll over the last couple of years and just assume that, it's going to be easy peasy, but I'm not totally convinced that they will be. I think they'll be competitive. And I think that if the Bears can play that hits philosophy and be smart, then it's going to give them an advantage and they should be able to win, but they're 3-point favorites at home, which means that generally speaking, that 3 points is a home field advantage, which means that the books see them as pretty equal. So we can get in. We'll get into that later on the week with preview shows and things like that. But yeah, this is what it is. It's year one of a rebuild. So don't get caught up too much on that. But let's get caught up in the numbers game.
That's a professional segue right there. I like that.
So here's our stat of the week this week. For me, it's the number 8, and that is the number of forced missed tackles that David Montgomery had in this one ball game, which is an incredibly impressive number. I had our guy, Brad Spielberger, PFF Brad, pull this number for me, and then he tweeted it out to the world. So if you did see that tweet earlier today, you can thank me for bringing that up.
You're the inspiration of that one.
You can also blame me because the number 11 was the number of forced missed tackles that Aaron Jones had last night, which... yeah, that checks out in my mind. That was as good of a performance as that was from Montgomery. It was brutal in terms of the missed tackles for the Bears against Aaron Jones. So, here's a moment where you say, well, okay, I think it's terrible that on the Bears defensive players to have missed all those tackles. And here I think Montgomery is awesome to have forced all those missed tackles for Green Bay. So, that fan perspective of where the lens that you're viewing it through is always kind of interesting. But I thought Montgomery ran as good as I have seen a Bears running back run in my conscious fandom. Like, I think that it was that good of a game. Forte has had some really great games. I love Matt Forte. I'm not old enough to really have Walter Payton experiences. So like I'm in the post Walter Payton era. I can remember some Neil Anderson. I love Neil Anderson, but to me, that performance last night, he had 5 or 6 like highlight runs in one game, and one run that I think it's his best run he's ever had in his life. That 20 plus yard run that was like on 2nd and 20. That's one of the best runs I've ever seen in my entire life. And so he was just absolutely on fire, and he was forcing those missed tackles, which is his hallmark. And if this is what David Montgomery is going to be week in and week out this year, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, the Bears talked about all offseason they want to be a run first type of team, and Montgomery's a huge part of that. I know last week a lot of Bears fans were done with Montgomery, because Herbert seemed to have a little better game. They forget the fact that it's just you can't judge these guys based on 1 week. It's a week to week league, but you know Montgomery's been a pretty good football player during his time in Chicago, and this is the guy that he's been. And like you said, some of those runs he had last night were phenomenal. It's unfortunate the Bears, they got the loss, because if somehow, some way they could have had a huge game behind Montgomery and it would have led them to win, this would have been one of those, that's the David Montgomery game.
Yep.
Something like that would have been his calling card, because it was. I mean, he had some of those, like the replay I talked about Chris Collinsworth earlier. That one where he was describing, his missed tackles. He's like, there's one, and then that there, what was that? It was just, he was so impressed with the way he was running, and that's his game. He's a powerful runner, but he has some shake to his game. So, I think we're gonna have a nice big season from Montgomery this year.
Yeah, I was just super impressed, and again, I'd have to kind of think about it or go back and maybe try to find some highlights, but I really think that 29-yard run or whatever that was on 2nd and 20, I think that might be the best run of his career. I know it wasn't a touchdown run or anything like that, but the amount of work that he did on that run, and there was multiple times where he was making moves, making a guy miss, and then carrying a guy and getting 12 yards instead of 4. I mean, just the extra yardage. I think I'm going to map it this week. I think that's what I'm going to do for Bears Over Beers, is go back and I'm going to map this. And I was really impressed with this performance. It was just, I can't say enough about how much I enjoyed watching David Montgomery run the football last night. So what about you?
Next Gen, well, real quick, I know Next Gen Stats does the rushing yards over expected, and I didn't catch this week, but I'm sure Montgomery's will be pretty good. But for me, my number, again, speaking of Next Gen Stats, it comes from those guys, and the number 61, and that is the number of consecutive coverage snaps without being targeted from the Chicago Bears CB1 Jalen Johnson, and that goes back to last year, the last 10 snaps of last year's game, plus 51 snaps this season. No one even throws at him. I mean, is it Jalen Johnson Island, or is it just a situation where they realize that the guys on the other side still aren't the best? I mean, I would, as a quarterback, I'd rather throw at Kendall Vildor, and I would rather throw at a rookie in Kyler Gordon than I would rather throw at Jalen Johnson. But that's incredible. And the thing about that is every corner so far this season with at least 50 coverage snaps through the first 2 weeks, except Johnson, has been targeted at least 7 times, and Jalen Johnson has not been targeted once.
It almost doesn't make sense.
That's weird.
I mean, we like Jalen Johnson a lot, but even we're like, wait, what? How does that happen? Like, how do you get to that point? But it's really cool. I mean, I know that we could talk about Kyler Gordon. I think I might a little later, but it is pretty remarkable that he hasn't been targeted yet. And so we'll see if the great Davis Mills decides to try to fly near Jalen Johnson Island. But yeah, that's for another week. But yeah, very cool stat. Let's talk about Justin Fields. We talked about him a little bit already, but let's talk about him here. So his final stat line: 7 of 11, 70 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, took 3 sacks. Ran the ball 8 times for only 20 yards, but did have that 1 touchdown. Should have had a second touchdown, but again, we've already covered that. I can't square this with what I saw in camp and with what I saw in the preseason. I can't square these performances in the first 2 weeks. The first week I wrote off because of the weather, but I can't. I don't understand it. I really don't understand how you go from moving the pocket a lot and, having this like play action based offense and having these shot plays, having Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet be these high target volume guys. And the stats on those 2 players are non-existent. And we're sitting here after 2 games looking at combined season stats for a quarterback. I mean, quarterbacks have more volume in 3 quarters of play than Justin Fields does in 2 games. So I don't know what the heck is going on and how to process this, because it doesn't square with anything I saw for the last 6 weeks.
Part of it was just the game flow, the way it was going. The run game was so big. But then you would think that that lends itself to some more play action shots every now and again. One thing I thought about a lot is 2 weeks ago against the 49ers, they talked about how disciplined the defense they faced. So some of those bootlegs they knew would not be the best thing to run. They got them with a couple, but they talked about how it wasn't a big part of the game plan. That's why there was so much shotgun stuff against the Niners. And then this week against the Packers, another team, a very good, disciplined defensive team. They see the similar offense every week in practice, every day in practice. We did see the one they tried to do like a quick bootleg out the back door, and Preston Smith stayed home. It was one of the sacks that Justin Fields took. Preston Smith, he was waiting on the backside. He did not go for the fake at all. He just stayed home, and then he attacked Justin Fields and took away the bootleg on the backside there. So, maybe it just wasn't a big part of the game plan because of the defense they faced. You would rather see an offense dictate things to a defense and make them at least stop us first, instead of just saying, okay, we can't do this very, very much because these guys are so good against it. I want to see them take shots. I want to see them try and do things. The run game was clicking. I understand that there was a couple other broken plays where it looked like a run pass option where it was just a bad play. The snap was too early. So some of that's there, but is this the offense, or is the offense we saw, in preseason or in camp? Is that the offense? Yeah, it's not, again, it's not perfect. There were some issues in camp, issues in preseason, but I want to see more of the moving pocket stuff because Justin Fields is good at that.
Yeah, I think we'll get a chance to see here in the next couple of weeks if, what the real Bears offense looks like. I hope so. I mean, they're going to have to figure out what this is and what this looks like. And so if the game plan was to try to, I don't know, hide Justin Fields, or like you say,
I hope that's not what they're doing. I hope they're not. I hope they have enough trust in him at this point to let him do a few things. Again, I think it could have been the game flow.
It could have been game flow, but it kind of feels like there may have been some galaxy braining happening, where you say like, well, they know that we know that that they know that he knows, and so we're not going to do that because they're going to know that, and it's like you're letting them hold the pen last then, or you're picking your third or fourth best thing to attack them with, right? And you can't play that way. No. You have to come out and play what you think your best is at. And if they stop it, then fine. Right. But to go to your third, fourth option because you think that it's not going to work because they know what I run, or, this is Green Bay, this is where I came from. So that they know the offense or whatever. I just don't know. Like you have one major, right? Like you have one thing that you practice all the time. That's your identity. And so you have to at least try to assert that. Again, they did run the ball very well. And so, far be it for me to say like, I know more about offensive football. I certainly don't. But I also don't understand what their offensive philosophy is right now. And we're 2 weeks into the season. Is it going to revert back to what we saw in the preseason? I would think so. But, we've seen two then kind of exotic game plans in a way that we're not going to see maybe very often. I don't know. Maybe it pays off in the long run. Again, wins and losses are not as important in this season. We've said it time and time again, but it just does kind of, it doesn't concern me yet, but I'm starting to jot down some notes.
And then to be fair, Justin Fields, he missed a couple guys. I know our guy, Robert Schmitz had an early access to all 22. He was sharing some clips with us, and there were a few times he missed some guys. And it's again 11 passing attempts. So young quarterback, a lot of times you want to get him in the rhythm. You want to try and give them some nice easy completions early, some screens, some stuff in the flat, and again he wasn't always taking what was there. So we talk about it all every show we talk about it. Young team going through a reset here. They're going to have some growing pains, and it's a new offense. So hopefully there's better things to come.
All right, we'll leave it there. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side of this, we're going to get into everybody's favorite segment, the Three Bears. All right, Lester, let's talk about the Three Bears. So we will start off with the hot bowl of porridge. I want to give this week's hot bowl of porridge to the entire running game. Am I allowed to do that? It's our category. We can do what we want.
We'll do whatever we want. Yeah.
Dave Montgomery, already kind of gushed over Dave Montgomery. You could just give the bowl to him, but that's not fair because it's the run game. These big guys need some love too. Montgomery, 15 carries for 122 yards. That's an 8.1 yard per carry. That's a heck of a game. But Khalil Herbert behind him, 4 carries for 38 yards. That's 9.5 yards a carry. The two running backs, I mean, that's an incredible clip there, right? So that the running game was absolutely working. The offensive line, I noticed again. I want to watch the all 22, and I might actually watch the Green Bay offensive line and see what they were doing, because I think that you could probably learn a little bit of what Getsy's philosophy is from watching the Green Bay offensive line and their run game, because their run game looked really good. I mean, Vince Lombardi would have absolutely loved the run game last night. He would have really been confused to who the hippie taking snaps for Green Bay was and why he didn't cut his hair. But he would have really loved the run game. I'm sure George Hallis would have too. George Hallis liked passing though, so nothing wrong with that either. But the combo blocks and scraping off into the second level. I talked about it a bit on Bears Over Beers last week, watching Tevin Jenkins and watching that interior offensive line play. You saw it a lot on both sides in this run game, and I think that you and I have talked about this. Give me the best 5 on the field and put them on the field and let them gel. And I think you're starting to see the gel now. We got to get Lucas Patrick's thumb figured out, so take that club off his hand and get him in the center position, and so that we'll have the 5 on the field. But if you get those 5 on the field and they learn how to successfully negotiate those combo blocks into the second level, you're going to start to see where the running back doesn't meet any resistance until second level, or even sometimes into the secondary, the third level, whatever you want to call it. And that's where those big plays happen, right? Especially when a guy like Montgomery or Herbert can make one guy miss. Then all of a sudden it's not an 8-yard gain, it's a 15 or 20-yard gain. And you start getting those chunk plays. It all starts up front, moving those guys off the spot and then scraping and getting that linebacker figured out. I thought they did a really nice job of that this week. I think everybody deserves a really nice, steaming hot bowl of porridge.
I'm right there with you. I had Montgomery and Herbert written down for mine, but yeah, I'm with you. Give it to all of them. The O-line did a great job. We talked about the fullback blasting game. I saw someone tweeted out the numbers with him on the field. It was ridiculous. The rushing yards gained with him on the field. The overall run game was clicking. Now let's see the next evolution of this offense next week against Texans. See if they can kind of add some more play action, some more deep shots there. But yeah, Montgomery and Herbert. And actually this week, I'm actually going to, for my sack watch, which now I do a video version, I break down, of course, the sacks allowed. I'm actually also going to break down that one nice long Herbert run, because there was some nice blocks from the entire offensive line on that play. And it's good vision by Herbert as well. So little teaser for those guys that are going to watch sack watch this week.
I think Herbert's a really fun change of pace. I mean, I'd love to see this team get actually like 60 snaps instead of 35 or whatever it was. But he's such a fun change of pace because Montgomery, again, he's a violent runner, right? Like, I mean, he does that, like you said, he has a little shake to him, but he has a lot of violence to him. And then there's this, like, Herbert comes in and it's like shot out of a cannon. I mean, it just boom, like he's just on you. And so that that contrast between the two players is really nice. I like that there's the different, slightly different skill set that they bring in. And so that can really take the defense off guard as well. So I know there's not a lot of silver lining here, but the run game definitely was. I mean, that was
for sure
a really nice thing to go back and watch. And I'm excited to watch it again for the all 22, and I can get my hands on that. Let's go to the cold. I mean, where do you want to go? I think we talked about Fields. He probably deserves a piece of this. We've already talked about him, but he missed some plays. He's got to pull the trigger. So I think that's at least something to talk about. This defense. I mean, you could just say tackling, but I will say Roquan. Roquan, if you want to get paid, you're going to have to make plays. And he did not. He was getting washed out of that running game way too easily. He was getting washed out by Allen Lazard. and he wasn't bringing anything special. That's for sure, to offset it. But he also just wasn't making the plays that he should be making for a guy of his stature. So uh, that was rough tape for Roquan, and it's not safe for work tape. I'll put it that way. Like that's stuff that you don't play because you're going to get in trouble with HR, because it's bad. It's bad.
This is week 2 of him playing as a 4-3 will linebacker. So hopefully there's better stuff to come here. But Olin Kreutz tweeted out, maybe it's time to put Roquan back at the mic. Maybe he's just better, more towards the middle of the field. I know it's so much nickel being played, so he's not always there anyway. But there could be something to that. Who knows? Let's see how this evolves. I know as a lot of us have fans and analysts also, we look at him as a good fit for this type of defense. That the 4-3 will is the chase guy. He's the guy that's usually free, he's able to make some plays. And like you said, he was washed out too much. He was blocked too easily. Coach Flus today at his press conference said he thought he was solid. I'm sure he thought all of his guys were solid, but he's not going to take shots at Roquan. But yeah, Roquan didn't have the greatest of game last night.
It was rough. What about you? Where do you want to go?
Kind of like you had the entire, Bears offensive run game. I'm going to give the cold bowl to the entire Bears defensive run game, because they gave up a ton of yards to the Packers, 203 yards rushing on the ground against Green Bay. That's the most rushing yards this franchise has given up since the Cleveland Browns game last year. And, you never want to be associated with that Cleveland Brown debacle. But that's the most they gave up since that time. You mentioned Aaron Jones, 132 yards, 8.8 yards per carry. A.J. Dillon had 61 yards. There was a fourth quarter Aaron Rodgers run around the end that was just like, come on, even Aaron Rodgers is going to run on these guys. It was just, it was horrible. And to make it worse is they weren't facing David Bakhtiari was gone. And then Jenkins was kind of hobbled a little bit. So it was an injured and undermanned Packer O-line, but they still got the job done against the Bears, the Bears defense.
So yes, I agree. You could give it to pretty much anybody on that defense. Let's talk about just right. And so the idea of just right is the player, the performance that you expect. It comes out and you expect. I had originally written down Jalen Johnson, and you covered that. He just has 0 targets through 2 weeks, which is pretty incredible. So just kind of another day at the office for Jalen. But we haven't talked about it yet, and so I'm just going to talk about it now. Just right, you got to give it up for the 12th man of the Green Bay Packers. Those guys that wear stripes, they deserve. They did exactly what we expect them to. From the first play with the low block, chop block, 15-yard free first down for Kindle Vildor, who slid past trying to basically avoid the block, but he didn't go at the knees. So that was a phantom call. You had the 12 man on the field that wasn't called. You had the false start that wasn't called. You had the hold on Travis Gibson, who ended up making the sack, but that was called, but then they picked up the flag, right? There was the block in the back on the return at the point of attack. People, like, this is not away from the play stuff. This is at the point of attack, very clear push in the back. Should have been a clip, 15 yards. The Bears player is pushed out of the play, and there's a positive gain of 10, 15-yard return. And that's a 30-yard swing there, right? Maybe I'm sure I'm missing some, right? I'm not even going to get into the things that aren't held. So the refs, they did exactly what we expect. So in the spirit of this category, we will hand them their just right bowl of porridge for their contributions to this Green Bay victory.
I was wondering how you're going to work the officials.
How's that for salty?
That was good. I mean, it was, you got to love those memes on social media where they show the referee doing the Lambeau leap.
Yep.
I mean, look, every fan base has issues with officiating from time to time. It just seems like it's just a little extra when it's Bears versus Packers on prime time. It seems like there's a little bit more there, and it's like, there were at least 2 false starts from Green Bay that were just completely missed. I saw them in my Twitter mentions. People were pointing them out to me. And it's like, I mean, at least I guess one good thing, there was no no phantom delay of games that were missed this time. That's usually really good with Rodgers. He's usually good for getting that, where it snapped, clearly after. And the spirit of the rule is they watch the ball, they watch the clock, and then they go back to the ball to make sure it was snapped. But yeah, I love how you work that in the officiating. Perfect stuff.
What about you? What do you got?
I'm not as creative as you. I'm going to go Cairo Santos. I'm going special teams. I mean, last week he missed a couple kicks, and Bears fans in pure, in heat of the moment fashion. Oh my God, maybe Santos sucks now. It's time for a new kicker already.
The water boy. Hey, we suck again.
I know. I'm like, what? It was a horrible weather. The footing was bad. It was he had his one extra point he made. He had a 44-yard field goal right down the middle. So, this is what we expect, Santos. The stuff we saw last week, missing kicks in the rain, that's not normal. This is the normal guy. He's an accurate kicker. He's fine. He does his job. So it was good to see him shake off, the problems from last week and just come out there and say, hey, I got this, 44-yard field goal. Let's go.
Honestly, it was tough to pick the just right bowl of porridge this week because it was either like really good performances or really bad performances.
I had the punter here first, and I'm like, it just didn't seem right to talk about the guillotine at this point because it was a loss. I'm like, let's keep that in the bag.
Fine, but he only had one inside the 20. Didn't have any. He just didn't have the opportunity to really put any too deep, given the field position stuff. So we need the guillotine game at some point where he coffin corners some people and puts inside the 5, leads to safeties, stuff like that. But that was not this game. He was fine. He was fine, but not the guillotine game yet.
Not yet.
We will end it there for the podcast here. We'll stick around on YouTube for some Q&A after this, and then let you guys watch Monday Night Football. But
doubleheader tonight on Monday night.
Yeah, doubleheader. I know.
Nice.
I believe a game's going on right now, and so there's that. But anything that you want to plug that's going on at the site or on the channel before we get out of here?
We just have so much stuff going on. I mean, if you missed anything on the channel or the YouTube or the podcast or the site, you missed a lot last week because there was so much stuff. I know the Making Monsters, with Taylor and Dylan, they had Miami head coach Chuck Martin talking about Dominique Robinson, just crazy insight. We had a Brian Urlacher interview from Bill Zimmerman last week. So there's just always something going on. So, make sure you stay locked into Windy City Gridiron, Second City Gridiron. And we got it covered.
Yeah, if you like the YouTube stuff, we're trying to put a lot of stuff up there. Still be nice if you give a download to on the podcast app. Those things help us too. Leave a review. I don't know the last time I asked anybody to leave a review on the podcast channel, but we don't have a ton of reviews out there. So if you like what you hear, that'll help us out. If you don't like what you hear, don't go leave a review. I don't know what you're doing with your time. Why are you listening this late into a podcast? So that would be great. Otherwise, I mean, it's a marathon. We've basically just hit the first couple miles of the race. We're just getting into stretching ourselves out, basically getting into the schedule and figuring stuff out. We'll have plenty of time to really dive into this rebuild throughout the year. I think it's been an interesting start. Last night did not go quite how any of us wanted to. I think it could have been a closer game. I would have loved to have had that last call been right and have it be a 7-point game and see what happens, to see if the defense would have been able to try to tighten up and maybe give the ball back and see if Justin Fields could have some magic late. Just not in the cards. That just doesn't happen against that team. At some point, those fortunes will change. It has to happen. I can't go my whole life in this way. It just can't happen. So we'll end it there. Appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next week. Till then, bear down. All right. What do we got?
I like this one here.
Thanks for keeping it PG.
F the refs.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. I started counting them up and I was like, we gotta mention it at least.
Those like I said, those missed false starts. It was like
I didn't say
there was one on the left tackle. And
then
then there was one, it was actually in Adam Johns or Adam Hogue's mentions. You know, they talked about how I think there was a missed. It was a really big play for the Packers too, and then one of the fans tweeted back at him, and they showed him. And sure enough, man, it was like a little early. It was clear as day. I mean, I didn't notice it live, but then again, I'm not looking for stuff like that. I'm not a referee, so you'd think they would see that kind of stuff. So I don't know, crazy.
John says Monty shut him up about not being efficient in the system. It's kind of what I want to go back and watch the run game this week and maybe break down Montgomery a little bit, because there's a big question, like, is he going to get an extension from this team or not? And there are some people that we talk to quite a bit that come at it from a pure analytics angle and say, like, heck no, don't ever pay a running back a second contract. Look at how good Khalil Herbert is. Give him the full reins next year. Draft another running back and just kind of keep doing that with mid-round running backs. Don't ever pay a guy. I mean, I kind of get that. I can understand the argument. I also think that there's a lot more than like analytics that go into team building.
Yeah.
And I think that if you purely just build a team on paper, you're going to end up with like kind of a soulless team. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I think that there are players that when you get them, they really start to identify what you are as a program. And I don't know if Montgomery is that, but if he runs like that the rest of the year, then I want him back, because that's the type of guy that sells jerseys, puts butts in seats, and with the historic nature of Chicago, I know everybody wants to move on and have a modern football team built, but there are still really good running backs that make an impact every week. And, if he can be had at a, that's always the caveat. Well, you can't break the bank or anything like that. I get that. But if he can be, if he can sign to a contract that is somewhat palatable, the Bears have money. And if he's someone that can return the value of that contract, then I think he's worth it because of what he does as a presence on the field and in the locker room. And that, to me, as an offensive lineman, if your running back is running that hard, like that feeds like, well, I can't give up, because you never know, man. He's grinding, he's churning his legs. He might break one. And I think that there's something to that. And it's very primal, very old school football. But I don't know, man. I'm not a get rid of David Montgomery kind of guy. I like him.
It's the money ball theory, right? Like in baseball, it's a different game. Baseball's a different game. I mean, baseball's a bunch of you're playing defense to team, but it's when it's batter versus pitcher, it's me against you. It's an individual sport, right? Football is all about the team. I think if you get a guy like Montgomery, and he's fairly young for his position. He was drafted, I think, at 21 years old. So, there's one more contract in him where you should be able to get good value out of him. I'm not like you. You don't break the bank for a running back in this day and age. But the big picture is he's capable as a receiver. He's a good blocker in the passing game as well. So he does more for you. And then we got a question here, asking, about the snaps, how the snaps should be distributed. I think Montgomery's still your guy. I think it's, he's at least, 60-40 with Herbert or Ebner once Ebner gets up to speed. I think Montgomery's still your guy. I'm not saying it's bell cow where he's like your number one guy all the time, because you still want to keep him fresh. And I think part of keeping him fresh helps his career in the long run. But I just think that I'm with you, man. If the price is right, if you can figure it out, and then with Justin Fields, if he's the guy, okay, you got him on a fairly, reasonable contract for his rookie season. So you can kind of space things out to kind of time it up to where, say, okay, look, here's Montgomery's deal. Once Fields is due, now we got to start, thinking about that. But I think Montgomery, I think he's worthy of a second contract. I know it's not a popular opinion amongst the analytics crowd, but he's a good football player.
He's a good football player. And at this point, the Bears can't be picky about where those good football players play their football. Like that's kind of that's the argument with Roquan as well, right? Is that, well, you're not going to pay an off-ball linebacker. And I think part of it was, okay, well, he's not an off-ball linebacker now. Now he's he's in the will. But I don't know. I think if you have blue chip players, that you want to keep those blue chip players. And maybe there's just this like, well, then you don't take those players, or you have to be comfortable with letting them go. I think that there's something about paying the best guys on your team, and that I think works well with the locker room, right? What was it? Did they like? Was it the Bears or was it somebody else who gave Nick Foles a bunch of money? Maybe this was when he signed with Jacksonville. They gave him like a bunch more money because they wanted the rest of the players to respect him. And so they like gave
That
him.
sounds like a Jacksonville thing.
I think it was Jacksonville. They kind of bid against themselves, and they gave him like this huge contract which the Bears ended up inheriting. And part of the argument was they literally came out and said like, well, he's the quarterback, so we want the players to respect him, so we had to pay him that. And I just it's like, yeah, okay, or you pay the guys because this was an outsider coming in.
Yeah.
Or you pay the guys that have earned it in the building, and that shows the respect that the organization has for, talented players that produce in those moments. So I mean, I don't know. I find team building fascinating, and I really get into it pretty deep, and I enjoy it. But he's already on the team, and he's already, again, if he continues to play like this, how do you let a guy like that go?
Reward your guys. I know he's not a Ryan Poles draft pick, but he's still a Chicago Bear. He's given a lot to the franchise. And like I said, if he's still fairly young and there's one more, 3 or 4 year deal on the table where you feel you're comfortable with him doing that. Plus he's been relatively healthy his entire career. So, I think he's a guy that you pay if you can figure it out there.
Yeah. The Mooney and Kmet thing, I don't know. I really don't. I just, it's not syncing with what I saw in the preseason or in the camp. I don't get it. I've been so off on my picks. I picked both of them the last 2 weeks in prop bets, to highlight, and I've put, they're going to be fine. I mean, I'm done. Like I'm gun shy now until I can see it. I'm not going to touch it because maybe it's not there. Maybe it's not there for either one of them. I mean, been into like a very specific argument about Cole Kmet with somebody, and it's like, I'm telling you, man, I'm just trusting my eyes at camp. This guy's going to be a huge part of the offense, and he hasn't. And I don't know what to say. Like, you can only trust your eyes, and you can only trust what you see. But I wanted to mention, no one has picked up on this. I'm changing the little top of the helmet every week, and I brought out a little Walter Payton Funko for tonight, and in honor of David Montgomery.
In honor of Montgomery,
we'll see. If people pick up the theme from now on. But last week it was Red Grange in honor of the 1920s throwback style of football that was happening in the first half. So we'll see how many props I can get through this season with.
Yeah, I'm like you. I was expecting a better start to Cole Kmet's season. I was expecting a better start to Mooney's season. Again, the monsoon is one thing, but now that we saw this, week 2, only 11 passing attempts. Kmet had the one chance, he dropped it. With Mooney, he had a negative 4-yard catch. It was like, and then the all 22 will show. I'm not saying that they're covered. I know that maybe that some teams like MP saying that they know those are your options. I didn't see that last week. I haven't had a chance to watch yet this week, but I know there were a couple times where Mooney was missed, a couple times where even Kmet was missed, where he was there. So I think it's just the offense of normal growing pains. Week 2 of a new scheme, a new system. It's going to take some time.
No, that's the other thing. We don't want to sound like apologists, but you hear it all the time about this particular style of offense that really does take a full year in the offense, and it's that second year in the offense before things really start to click. And there's some things we could deep dive a little bit into Justin Fields that maybe he's got a lot more growth to give than some other aspects of his game, and how much do you lean into that versus how you're trying to grow those other aspects. But the classic case is Matt Ryan in Atlanta, right? With Kyle Shanahan, where His first year wasn't very good, and he'd been a pretty good quarterback before that. And then that next year, he took off. And that's what you kind of hear about that Kyle Shanahan type system. And this is a disciple. It's going to be his own. He's going to run his own version of it. But, Darnell Mooney said something to the effect of, well, we need to win with him while he's here because we're only going to have him 2 years because he's going to get a head coaching job after that. And that's just a receiver propping up your offensive coordinator. But, that they think highly of him. And the reality is that is the timeline. He's not going to leave this. Everybody, well, boy, if the Bears are really good this year, he's going to leave in 1 year. I mean, just the history of it kind of says this is a 2-year thing, at a minimum. So we'll see. I mean, there's time, there's growing pains, but overall, this offensive system does usually take a second year.
It's not ideal, but it's the Bears are 1-1 after 2 weeks. I don't think no one really, if we would have said, before the season, hey, the Bears are going to split against the Packers and Niners, we'd be like, okay,
you take it.
I'll take it. And then of course, it's a year-to-year league. I mean, the Texans may be better, like you talked about. The Giants could be better than that we talked about earlier. So, we'll see what happens. But who knows?
None of us would have said that. I would have said that at the beginning of the year. If you offered me 1-1 to start the year, I would have taken it.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears were, clearly by the national analysts, by all of the betting world, the Bears were heavy underdogs in both games. I mean, no one, fans, of course, we want our team to win, but I think generally speaking, the national narrative was that the Bears were going to get beat both those games. So the fact that they came out of it 1-1, it is what it is. I mean, this is a reset year anyway, so I'm good with it.
We'll end on this, but the implied odds, this is why we're going to end on it. You can kind of figure out what the odds, like what they're backing into in terms of the odds there. To the betting odds for a game that's up 10 points. Okay. Basically, they're saying that if they played that game out 100 times, the Bears would win 21 of them. Okay. Same thing with that Niners game. That ended up being like a 9.5 point spread, I think. 9 points, 9.5 point spread. So very similar spreads. So they're basically saying that they play that game 100 times. They're simulating that the Bears are going to win 20 to 25% of the time. That's just what those implied odds mean. Doesn't mean that can't happen. Doesn't mean, it's football. They're all professional football players. That things happens. But in general, that's what that means. I have thought that in both games that the Bears would cover that spread. I think they're better than the spread, but I didn't think that they would win the game outright. I mean, I'm never going to pick against the Bears, officially against the Packers. Like it's not going to happen. But I thought that they would keep it close. So I thought they would be inside of that narrower range where they cover the spread, but they probably still lose the game. But there's, again, then the spread is saying like we think 50% of the time they're going to win. The Packers are going to win by 10 points or more, and 50% of the time they're going to win. The Bears are going to cover 10 or they're going to win, right? Like that's kind of how to think about the difference between those two things. And so, these guys are smart. Like these are very sophisticated models and people that do this for a living that make a lot of money off of saps like us who, have a couple $100 in a betting account, right? Like that's how they make their money. And so like there's some real juice behind that thinking. And the fact that the Bears are, they're saying like, they're going to lose these games at that rate. It just says where they're at in their development, and that's fine. It's not that big of a deal. But I think you want to see if they can outperform that expectation in the handicap. Like that's what I'm looking at. That spread. Can they keep the game close? And that's probably why it made me so upset that we didn't get a clean game last night, because I think they would have. I think they would have outperformed that, and I think they would have kept it close, and they would have made Rodgers sweat. So even if it was a really close game, to me that would have been more satisfying than what we watched, which seemed like it was thumb on the scale. And so just went the other way because of all the things that broke down. The Bears aren't good enough to overcome all of that, right? That's probably my frustration. So there's my rant to end the night.
That's a good way to end it. It's good. I mean, and speaking of the gambling and the odds and stuff, making sure you guys are all checking out JB's show on Sunday mornings at 10. You and Ross Reeds talk about the prop bets, talk about the picks, the odds, and then you and Eric Smith go over daily fantasy, and then actual fantasy. I've been checking it out in the morning. I told you before, I wake up around that time on the weekends. I always make sure I'm up, so I just pop it on my TV on YouTube and I kind of watch it, and it kind of gets me primed for the day's action because you guys talk about all the games, which is kind of cool to hear. So it's for me, that's my new my new pre Sunday ritual is checking out you and Ross and Eric. It's a nice show.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, Ross and I were +3 on our bets combined last week. I mean, I was +6, he was -3. But again, like those are going to happen. He's gonna have a great week, and I'm gonna have a bad week this week because of that Bears game. There was a big swing because we both had some juice on the +10 for the Bears, but we were still profitable. So if you bet everything that we bet. This week, you would have been up 1.5 units. Last week, you would have been up 3 units. So again, if you would have been betting with us for the first 2 weeks, you're up 4.5 units. That's a pretty good start to your year. Hopefully, we can continue to do that. And then the prop bet stuff's a lot of fun. We've got a sponsor that we're really happy to be working with, Prize Picks. So check them out. Best promo code in the world, Bears. And then Eric Smith, he's the QB list. Editor-in-chief. There's nobody that knows fantasy stuff better. It's just
he knows it, yeah.
And if you have a question, bring it. Like we will answer it. You want to talk about a trade that some Yahoo in your league offered you, like put it in the chat. We'll talk about it. You want to talk about start-sit decisions, like we will talk about your fantasy team and take advantage of it. There's just nobody that has their finger on the pulse quite like Eric, and that's why I like working with him. And then, we're doing a survivor pool too. So just like pulling in all these things that we're really having a lot of fun with. So I appreciate you checking it out, and hopefully everybody else can do that as well.
Awesome.
All right, man. Well, we'll get out of here. And we will hope for better times coming up soon.
Nice.
Thanks, everybody.